You can spend months building trust with Palmer Luckey and collapse the entire dynamic in 30 seconds by asking him to just follow a process. This is not because he's difficult, it's because you misread his architecture. You might see his Hawaiian shirt, his humor, his rapid-fire conversation, and his apparent openness. Every single one of those signals tells your brain that this person is negotiable, that this person responds to consensus. You might think that by building rapport, appealing to his team, and by introducing constraints diplomatically, that you'll get cooperation. But that read is actually incorrect, and it's also very expensive. The moment you reach for consensus, his internal personality system is going to register something different. It's going to register this as an obstacle. And Palmer Luckey does not negotiate with obstacles. He routes around them. Let's classify the hardware first. The public profile presents a broad, expansive facial architecture. Just look, for instance, at the facial width-to-height ratio. On the surface, this reads as warmth and approachability, and structurally it is signaling something real. Extreme environmental receptivity, high social bandwidth, and a tendency to assume space and generate gravitational pull in any room. But if you look at the lateralization, the eyes contradict the mask. Take a look at the mirror right here. Slightly exposed, positively tilted, tracking with predatory acquisition speed. This neck is thick, the jaw beneath the facial hair is square and heavy, and the chin projects forward. This is not a passive architecture. This is a dominance structure insulated by social camouflage. You might look at his face and see that it signals abstract theoretical processing in the flat facial model. The behavioral record actually violates this entirely. Luckey is someone who delivers autonomous fighter platforms years ahead of military timelines. He cites exact dollar figures, specific material compositions, and precise production windows. He builds lethal physical infrastructure from raw cross-disciplinary synthesis. So he's not solely an abstract thinker wearing a bulldozer's face. He is a kinetic executor, think someone akin to Elon Musk, and he's wearing the camouflage of a jovial eccentric. This mask definitely works. It gets Luckey into rooms that would otherwise reject him. The Pentagon is not naturally comfortable with a 32-year-old in a Hawaiian shirt redesigning their procurement architecture. The soft exterior buys him access, and the iron interior closes the deal. Now watch what happens under pressure. When Palmer Luckey's environment introduces friction, slow timelines, committee reviews, consensus requirements, his behavioral record is consistent and unambiguous. He does not slow down. He accelerates into the constraint and forces reality to conform to his operational tempo. He has described his company culture as effective rather than responsible. He has self-funded massive initiatives specifically to eliminate external control. He has openly contradicted political orthodoxies, knowing that it would cost him contracts. But this is not actually impulsivity. It's a fully systematized preference for autonomous velocity over permission from institutions. We can also see with Palmer Luckey that he has deep tribal loyalty, but this is to a chosen in-group only. Overall, his agreeableness is pretty low, and his high self-determination means that once you are classified as an obstacle, that categorization is pretty much permanent. He does not revisit it when you become more diplomatic. He simply builds a road directly around you. So here's where the standard playbook detonates. Imagine that you're a senior executive working with him on a critical initiative. The team is nervous. You decide to surface a concern, and you tell Palmer Luckey the rest of the team is not comfortable with this timeline, for instance. You might believe that you have just created a legitimate negotiation point. You have introduced reasonable caution. You've represented your stakeholders professionally, but Palmer Luckey here will hear something completely different. He hears that an institutional constraint is attempting to override the objective, the outcome. His architecture responds not with compromise, but with the question, how do I eliminate this constraint? This conversation that you thought was a negotiation is actually for him a classification event, and you just got classified. The second landmine is actually even more counterintuitive, and that's showing your work, walking Palmer Luckey through the process, demonstrating competence by revealing your methodology step by step. Whereas this might work with another archetype like a Ray Dalio, in most environments it does build credibility, but with this one, it's a direct assault on his attention span. He processes reality through macro trajectories, civilizational implications, bottom line mechanical outcomes. Remember what I mentioned earlier, Palmer weighs your outcomes much more than he weighs your processes. Forcing him into granular operational detail triggers a claustrophobic processing response, and he will physically disengage before you finish the sentence. The third failure node is the moralizing critique. challenging a decision based on its emotional impact on the team, its fairness, its social optics. These arguments do not compute in Palmer Luckey's world. They mark you as an irrelevant operator, and his response will be a blunt, overpowering logical counterattack that bypasses the emotional register entirely. Now, before I give you the tactics that work, if you want to identify which of the 4 behavioral architectures you're actually dealing with before entering a high-stakes dynamic, there's a free PDF brief available now. There are 4 foundational behavioral baselines delivered immediately to your inbox. The link is in the description below. Pattern recognition is where precision for you begins. Now for 3 asymmetric plays for navigating a Palmer Luckey architecture in your own environment. First, the unvarnished bypass. This means that you should not open with pleasantries. Do not build to the point. Open mid-thought with the ugliest mechanical truth of the situation, stated flatly and without qualification. For example, the current supply chain fails under X load. Here is the specific failure point. This bypasses Luckey's social camouflage entirely. It signals that you are not performing for him and places you immediately in the category of high-value data source rather than tribal bureaucrat. The second one is the multidisciplinary hook. Palmer Luckey has documented hyper-engagement when disparate fields are connected. For example, synthetic biology applied to aerospace tolerances, anime narrative structure applied to weapons interface design. When you need to capture his full attention, introduce a highly specific, concrete variable from a completely unrelated domain that maps onto the current operational problem. This feeds his core drive for novel synthesis and repositions you as an intellectual accelerant rather than a process enforcer. Third, and this is the most counterintuitive, the impossible constraint challenge. Do not ask Palmer Luckey for his timeline. Present a severe mechanical barrier. For example, the physics of this system cap output at X, and then just stop talking. Palmer Luckey's high dominance, low compromise architecture will not register this statement as information. He's going to register it as an adversary. And adversaries activate his deepest operational drive. What you intended as a risk disclosure, he will experience as a challenge. This is some 3D chess. It's an asymmetric move and it's low cost to you, and massive internal mobilization will result on his end. Now, running the wrong playbook on this architecture does not produce neutral results. It produces active circumvention. Palmer Luckey will not tell you that you've been downgraded. He will simply begin executing around you, and you will only realize after the decision has already been made. If you have a target in your life with this profile, a founder, a senior operator, a high-velocity decision maker that you cannot afford to misread, the Strata protocol extracts their exact behavioral fingerprint, morphological structure, behavioral record, pressure responses, and it is all synthesized into a tactical dossier delivered within 48 hours. The link is in the description below, strataintel.io. The architecture does determine the outcome. You should know it before you walk into the room.